Ottoman Empire is by and large more accommodating of its minority population than any European country was of its minority populations. And it seems sometimes seen as a model. In general, empires are better minorities because empires work through minorities, and nation states are bad with minorities. I mean, as a crude political science rule. So what happens in Bulgaria in 1876 is that there's a revolt. By a group of Bulgarian nationalists, a group of these people formed out of this Bulgarian National Committee attacks the Turkish police station. The Turks retaliate, and they retaliate brutally. Now, news of that gets out, and this is another bit of evidence for the making of this kind of international community. It gets out to Bulgarian students who are studying at a Christian university in Istanbul, at Roberts College. So note again a world culture coming into being. So Bulgarian students studying in Istanbul get word out. Word gets out from Istanbul. The press picks it up. The British press starts investigating. The British consul in Istanbul is sent to investigate. A lot of people, including the British press, don't trust the British to investigate this, reasonably because they have this interest in the Turkish side of this. The American consul in Istanbul, is sent out with a bunch of journalists, including a British journalist, American journalist, and a German journalist, and they go investigate Bulgaria, and they come back with all these kinds of reports, which then circulate in the press in the way that you know about it. So this is the thing. We hear about this through this international student community. Various people in the press go out and make this known. It's not reported to the British public, and we have a gigantic agitation in its behalf. And Chris found this a nice thing from the Times to just show you what I'm talking about here. And he highlighted, if only a small part of the story of these massacres, pillagings, hangings, burnings, drowning, and ravaging is true, it's enough to make people, in the name of humanity, right, in the name of humanity, insist on end being put to such proceedings, not only for the present, but also guarantees for the future. So here we have a national political claim in the interest of humanity, which does seem to, as Gary Batts argues, contra the realists, come not from a particular national interest, but from a politics of humanitarianism and human rights in a particular country, linked up to international information networks. Right? So Gladstone, in the text you have, represents a parliamentary speech, or the elaboration of a parliamentary speech, meant to make this case, to shame the government into not supporting the Turks. And what actually then happens is that when the Russians do intervene on the behalf of the Bulgarians out of Russian national interest, and the British might be, and Disraeli wanted to intervene on behalf of the Turks, British public opinion against national interest keeps Britain from allying with the Bulgarians. There's a Russian war against the Bulgarians. The Russians, these are the two protagonists, show what they look like. This is the Prime Minister. This is Mr. Gladstone that I've talked to you about. And here you get the kind of public position. Turkey, will you not befriend me, befriend you, not with your hands of that color? So is that clear? There's Britain, chaste virgin that she is. Boadicea, the sort of virgin queen of the ancient Britons in mythical time or whatever. And the Turk with his bloody hands, the murdered children in the background, the skulls on posts and so forth. And Britain, the British view of themselves as a nation is, we couldn't possibly do business with you guys. So that's a pretty interesting political configuration. And there's the other side. There's Britannia pointing to all these slaughters. And there's Mr. Disraeli, the realist, saying, not my problem. Reading a book. He was a novelist, among other things. So you get the contrast? We won't deal with it. And so, and it's actually still an important part of the Bulgarian sort of conscious relationship to Britain. They put up a show on this subject, and there's Mr. Gladstone's great-grandson visiting Bulgaria, seeing an exhibition about the importance of his great-grandfather in Bulgarian independence. And actually, the picture, Delacroix's picture of Chios is still controversial, and I can tell you about this some other time. So, the conclusion then, the conclusion of the lecture is it's pretty good, 5 minutes to go. The afterlife of these traditions is still with us today. On the one hand, apolitical humanitarianism, which is also being challenged, and on the other hand, political military actions against the sovereign state, or inaction in support of revolutionaries when you might want to act otherwise, which is also being challenged. So we see here the beginning of a story that we're going to have versions of as the course progresses. Now, if someone's really fast, go over to get a coffee and get in line for us. Thank you.